recognize that this Indian institution, founded in 1943 and considered by law as an institution of national importance, is the institution of excellence, where leading intellectuals and experts in the field of international relations, diplomacy, international trade, and foreign affairs meet. This is why, from the Catholic University of Peru, we see with great interest the possibility of developing research projects on the relationship between India and Latin America, and particularly between India and Peru, promote the exchange of experts, and organize bilateral seminars on global issues of common interest. We also want to follow issues of common interest, such as the negotiation of the free trade agreement between Peru and India, where we could actively participate through the international relations programs, our international relations programs, and the Centrum Business School and other units from our university. The conditions for this joint work are given. Thanks to the support provided by the Embassy of India in Peru, we have a memorandum of understanding of cooperation between the Indian Council of World Affairs and the Catholic University of Peru, signed in October 2021 by the highest authorities of our institutions. It is precisely this event in which we are participating right now that is the beginning of this development of this agreement, in which we have a lot of interest and expectations. In relation to cultural issues, I would like to thank the support provided by all these years by the Embassy of India and the Government of India in the organization of activities of our Center of Oriental Studies at our university through his cultural days. I take this opportunity to highlight the role of Dr. Jose León Herrera, who established very close ties with India through his academic work and the promotion of knowledge of that country, of your country, in our university and country. In honor of Professor León Herrera's legacy, we remain committed to continuing to promote the teaching of the language and culture of India in Peru and in our university. We are open to explore different ways to improve this knowledge. The Catholic University of Peru considers this agreement or this relationship as a strategic importance to develop a more active academic link with Asia. And for this, we are designing a better institutionally that allows us to diversify and be more efficient in this effort. We are sure that with the support of the Indian Embassy and the Indian government and Indian institutions, such as Indian Council of World Affairs, that will be possible in the not too distant future. On behalf of the Catholic University of Peru, I reiterate our satisfaction and commitment to this path that we are starting today, and we hope to continue on work and be very successful in this joint effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Farfinchi, please. Dr. Stuti, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Tang, and I welcome everybody here to the ICWA PUCP's first dialogue on India-Peru relations. I now invite our ambassador, Mr. Subba Raidu, Ambassador of India to Peru, to kindly make his remarks.
Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, Director General of ICWA, Dr. Aldo Panfichi, Vice Rector of PUCP, distinguished colleagues, speakers, participants, good evening and good morning to those from the region. A dialogue on relations between India and Peru is both timely and relevant, as it comes at a juncture when India is commemorating 75 years of independence. Peru just celebrated its bicentenary, and the two countries would be entering into their 60th year of diplomatic ties next year. Also, India's engagement with Latin America, especially in trade and business has seen a substantial surge in the recent past, and the future remains quite promising. In the context of promotion of understanding on bilateral, regional, and global issues of mutual interest and exchange of visits sought to be pursued under the recently concluded MOU between ICW and PUCP, today's event is most welcome. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join the dialogue. I would like to give an overview on relations between India and Peru. The relations are marked by friendship, cultural affinity, and growing people-to-people contacts. Though continents apart, we have several similar attributes. Both are ancient civilizations, multicultural and diverse. Besides shared commitment to democracy, rule of law, free market economy, and inclusive development, the two countries have many common global concerns, including climate change, poverty alleviation, disease, terrorism, and natural calamities. We are partners in South-South cooperation. As mentioned earlier, the year 2023 marks the 60th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Peru. The mutual desire to strengthen and promote friendly ties continues to drive our relationship, and considerable progress has been made in the past 6 decades. On political front, India attaches importance to its engagement with Peru. High-level political exchanges and contacts have happened. Visits by presidents of India in 1998, vice presidents in 2013 and 2018 to Peru were milestones in the bilateral journey. Similarly, Peruvian presidents visited India in 1987 and 1997, and the president of Peru was the chief guest at the Republic Day parade in New Delhi in 1987. Ministerial visits and contacts have also occurred, taking forward the bilateral agenda. Parliamentary interaction is another dimension of our relationship. A multi-party parliamentary delegation accompanied the vice president on an official visit to Peru in 2018 and had fruitful interactions at the Congress. We value the contribution of Peru-India Parliamentary Friendship League. Our economies are complementary, and so are our industrial and technological needs. The bilateral trade, which was $400 million in 2009, has gone up 9 times. Today, India is among the top 7 trading partners of Peru. After recording an 88% growth, the bilateral trade touched an all-time high of 3,620 million in the calendar year 2021. This includes India's exports of 1,111 million, which is a 35% rise over the previous year. India is the 6th largest export destination and 9th largest source of imports for Peru. However, both countries are far from realizing their true potential. The trade basket is still limited, and there is scope for expansion. Indian business delegations have been regularly interacting with the Peruvian side to enhance trade and business. Indian companies are present in Peru with modest investment, and similarly, Peruvian companies are active in India. After establishing the potential to increase and diversify trade and economic engagement, both countries had embarked on a negotiation process to finalize a trade agreement. 5 rounds held so far exchanged lists and discussed several topics. The 6th round is delayed owing to the pandemic, but both sides are willing to fast track the negotiations. India's global capabilities in IT, digital technology, innovation makes it a trusted provider of efficient solutions. COVID-19 pandemic has exposed deficiencies in healthcare infrastructure. There is a realization to strengthen partnership in the field of health, including traditional systems. Government of India gifted 9 tons of essential medicines and protective gear to combat COVID-19 to Peru. We offered to explore possibilities for production of various kinds of vaccines in Peru. We had also offered to share COVID mitigation technologies and solutions, technology development, manufacturing, and tech-based goods and services. The multifarious cooperation between the two countries covers several areas, including space, energy, defense, high technology. Institutional mechanisms exist to take forward bilateral cooperation in science and technology, IT development, space, defense, new and renewable energy, geology and mineral resources, agricultural research, education, culture, tourism, diplomatic training, capacity building, and knowledge sectors. The natural attraction for Indian dance, music, art, and philosophy is a strong connect between the two countries. Yoga and Ayurveda are gaining popularity. As part of development cooperation, we have been sharing our expertise in diverse areas. India offers 60 civilian training slots per annum to Peruvian nationals under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. Close to 580 Peruvian nationals have taken part in ITech and other programs. Indian IT majors are also contributing to local capacity building in a significant way by employing Peruvian youth up to 97% of their operational requirements. More than 4,000 working professionals have benefited from the India-Peru Center of Excellence in Information Technology set up in Lima with the Government of India's assistance. We are happy to have been able to collaborate in disaster relief efforts of Peru. The two countries cooperate in regional and multilateral fora and support each other on several issues of global importance. Our partnerships within International Solar Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Pacific Alliance, and Andean Community can bring desirable outcomes to further cement our ties. India has acquired global expertise in several key sectors and is a willing partner. Mutual capabilities and requirements need to be understood and matched. A better understanding of issues of mutual interest would help the two countries to further cement their ties. In this context, the joint efforts of ICWA and PUCP are highly valuable. With these words, I would like to stop. This is an overview of our relationship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. May I now request Ms. Monica Campos, the Charge d'Affaires of Embassy of Peru, India, to kindly make her remarks. Thank
you. El audio.
Now, okay?
Sí, perfecto.
Good morning, Excellencies, authorities, Universidad Católica del Perú, Ambassador Tsuboyama. Good morning and good evening here in India. Thanks for the excellent presentation previous me. He described all our relation. So what I prefer to do is to talk about a little of our work, the work of embassy we are doing in India to complement what was saying with Excellency of Embassy in India. To talk about the current relation between Peru and India is to look at the more than 30 bilateral agreements we have signed, ranging from cooperation in defense, education, and traditional knowledge to the establishment of the Peru-India Joint Commission. Our ties with India are also imprinted by a search of bilateral trade, which was rebounded after the pandemic, incredibly, maybe because of the increase of the mineral price. We achieved like $3.6 billion last year, mainly in gold and copper. India is our first and our main buyer of Peruvian gold worldwide. At the same time, Peru is the 5th source of gold imported by India. But besides the minerals, we are exporting to India agricultural products, such as citrus, Amazonian nuts, cranberries, peanuts, coffee, avocado, among others. Next week, we are going to participate in the famous Annapurna Annu Food 2022. The biggest commercial fair will be held in Mumbai. We will strongly promote sacha inchi, arándanos, and cranberries, which they are entering here in India is with a great welcome for especially the young generation. They are very curious about the vitamins and many things we are trying to share with them. Regarding investment, I would like to say, but while not it's showing the flows, major companies, Indian companies, are making investment in Peru, like TCS, Bajaj, Mahindra, and pharmaceutical like Glenmark and Intas have taken root in Peruvian soil. Also, private entrepreneurs are doing good business with fabrics and cotton. They always come to the embassy and try to have suppliers and make commercial, but a small one, but it's increasing. Peru has also opened investment in India through ventures, such as Reliant Drilling and AAC mining companies, which they are bringing our Asian knowledge of the Andes with the technicians, operators, and mining experts. Also, AGE Group, one of the major bottle drink conglomerates found with Peruvian capital, is operating in India more than 12 years. And he is very successful in Mumbai. Last week, I would like to say that last week, the head of missions, we have an important meeting with the Confederation of Indian Industry, with the President of Secretary is Surab Kumar and Gloria Gante, Black Division of External Affairs, in order to coordinate the 9th CII India Lab Conclave to be held on 22 and 23 next November. Both sides have several meetings before, and we agree that both regions have the same vision: growing lab presence in India, as well as Indian investment in our region, increase the bilateral and regional trade potential, thriving our private sectors, and boost economic cooperation between the regions. Both sides identified great potential in health and pharma, vehicles, components, energy, information technology, IT, information technology services, ITSC, main flag of India, defense and space, agriculture and food security. We believe that our bilateral relations only can go up. I would say that next year is particularly important as we celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations, a major landmark in our mutual history. This is also a chance to take stock of our work, of the work we've done so far, and to develop the new emerging areas of cooperation between our countries. At the bilateral level, our intention is to carry out the second joint commission and restart the negotiation of the trade agreement that is under discussion since 2019. This is very important for us. Also, we are preparing the legal framework for cooperation in pharma sector with a MOU between the Central Narcotics Control Organization, CEDESCO, and the DIGEMIT. This is as well as medicinal plans, social security, and many others we have negotiating. At the multilateral level, Peru and India aim to have a reformed international order with a strong multilateralism based on the principles of defense of international peace, democracy, human rights, sustainable development, rule of law, science, and information. We reaffirm our commitment to combat terrorism in all its forms and to cooperate in common challenges, such as curbing climate change. We support universal access to health, maintenance of international supply chains, and healthy and sustainable planet. And we achieve an achievement of the Sustainable Development Objectives. In terms of such power, as great and ancient civilizations, Peru and India admire themselves without any effort. For example, the writings of the poet Ravi Thapar have inspired Peruvian writers such as César Vallejo. Nowadays, Peruvians have taken the practice of yoga and are actively watching, enjoying Bollywood films and Tamil films. Many come from India in search of spirituality and peace. In the same vein, Peruvian culture and food is making headways into the Indian psyche, process that this embassy is more than willing to accompany. Through gastronomy festivals, chef master classes, in hospitality faculties of university and institutes here in Delhi and in Mumbai. Peru is always part of film festivals organized by Ibero-America and Latin America group. In October, we will participate in the Bengaluru Famous Film Festival along with the Pacific Alliance members. In terms of tourism, Indian young generation is being allured by the ancient Inca civilization and the legacy of monuments as Machu Picchu and Nazca Lines. We are making good promotion of our safe COVID sites in this matter. It is important to mention that for next year, to celebrate our anniversary, Peru is planning many activities in the frame of this huge event for us, which will be preceded by the visit of our goodwill ambassador, the flagship vessel BAP Union, to the historic port of Goa. A series of major visits of Peruvian personalities, like Ana Maria Coborno, the inheritor of the legacy of Nazca Lines, during the International Latin American Conference organized by the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, we will shortly highlight this important occasion. We also are planning to donate the image of the Lord of the Miracles to the Cathedral of Delhi, and many cultural activities will be held at the same time in Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Bengaluru. And they will take place to celebrate our anniversary. Well, I hope to give you a guidelines of the work we are doing here right now, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. I now hand over the proceedings to our chair, Professor Ruben Tang, who's advisor to the Vice President of Research at PUCP. Over to you, Professor Tang.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stuti. Thank you very much for the ambassadors, authorities for your remarks. As you mentioned very clearly, the relation between India and Peru has been traditionally cordial and friendly, right? So it will be a good opportunity for the next year that we celebrate the 60 years anniversary of diplomatic relations between both countries to think about maybe to organize an event regarding this issue next year. No? So it's a good opportunity to continue working together based on the memorandum of understanding we signed last year. So we're going to start about the dialogue, and some important points of discussion we put in the field. First of all is, for example, highlight the economic and political engagement that India has in Latin America and Peru in Asia, and how they can incorporate this to strengthen the bilateral ties. A second question or point of discussion, we can think about how do the two nations view the relations with each other. What are the emerging areas of cooperation in the relation? What are the areas of cooperation in the multilateral arena? What is, of course, the challenges that the countries of the region have faced during the pandemic, that your ambassador also mentioned? What are the economic recovery plans for that they have implemented, and what is their vision of a post-pandemic international order? Finally, we can discuss about how can they deploy soft power resources to increase their presence in each other's public imagination. So to respond about these two questions, we have invited four speakers, no, to discuss about this. Well, if the first speaker is the Ambassador Ravi Thapar, who he is the former ambassador of India to Panama, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. We're going to introduce Ambassador Ravi Thapar very briefly. He's a versatile lawyer diplomat with more than 36 years of professional experience. He has served as Indian envoy at Lebanon, New Zealand, Western Samoa, and UN, and also at Panama, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. Earlier, during his pandemic career, he was assigned as a Child Affairs in Suriname and Consul General of India in Milan, Italy. His long diplomatic tenure culminated with elevation to the rank of Secretary to the Government of India. After retiring from the Foreign Services, Ambassador Thapar is currently enrolled as an advocate with the Delhi High Court. Professor Ravi Thapar, welcome to our dialogue, and you have the words.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thang. Greetings to my colleague, Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh in India, also to Chargé Affairs Monica Campos. Greetings also to Vice President Aldo Panifici, Ambassador Subaraidu. I don't know if he's still online, Ambassador Tsuboyama. Of course, not to forget the very active co-organizer, Dr. Stuti Banerjee. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Latin America and Caribbean has been a passion throughout my career. What has not been mentioned, perhaps, is that I was once also the Director General and Joint Secretary for Latin America. And I did have the privilege of traveling with our president, Her Excellency Dr. Pratibha Patil, to Mexico, Chile, and Brazil, and also accompanying former late president, who was then External Affairs Minister, Dr. Pranab Mukherjee, and Minister of State, Shri Anand Sharmaji, several times. I must say that Indo-LAC relations have really come a long way, and congratulations to our young diplomats, who are enriching this relationship. Ambassador Subaraidu has been there. It's very nice to know that the LAC region has now, Peru, for example, has picked up from 2009, $900 million to about $3.6 billion, as he was telling us, 9 times. I also believe that the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry have, kind of stipulated that by 2025 or a little more, the trade should go up to $100 billion US. Well, as a former, conduit and catalyst in the Indo-LAC chain, and now as an academic, I have a few suggestions and a few, analytical remarks. The first point is, I think we should begin examination of this from a very macro perspective. Both are countries of the global South. In fact, that is a subject I'm teaching right now at the OP Jindal University, challenges faced by the global South. There is a lot of resonance in our objectives, political and of course, economic and multilateral. I think this should guide our mutual vision. And one thing which I like to say here, because of the difficulties faced by the global South, and may I say, the bias or the tendency that economic and financial advantages tend to only accrue to certain countries and certain multinational corporations, I think we need to address this. And there should be therefore a rethinking on the opportunities which we give to each other. I was just reading about some of the reports in the papers, how there have been recently protests at the La Bamba's mine and the Kuahone copper mine. And it was because of the dissatisfaction of the local communities about the deal they are getting from their foreign employers. Now, this exactly is the beginning point of the discussion. We have to diversify this whole scenario. And we have to handshake more with new partners. And the second point I'd like to make is, One thing which is very much in the pipeline and in the offing is that is going to be the technology and the knowledge-based economies which are going to rule in the future decades. I have a lot of association with the Silicon Valley, USA. I also had a chance to study at Berkeley, and I have friends and relatives there. It is undoubtedly one of the most, it's the highest per capita technology concentration in the world. That's why the US is a world leader today. It's not just by accident. It's not just because of democratic values. It's because of their absolute command on technology and innovation. And if that is going to be the scenario in the future years, may I submit to this very learned gathering that India can be, if not a financial donor, if it's not going to be a financial donor, it can certainly be a knowledge partner for Peru and the Latin American countries. So this is a very important point I'd like to make in this discussion today. We are the world's probably 4th largest, maybe 5th largest reservoir of technical manpower in the world. I mean, the amount of engineers, technology experts we are literally churning out every year is amazing. And there is a lot of energy, there's a lot of keenness. Many of them venture into developed economies and Western economies, and they do so well. I don't have to say how the Indian diaspora is contributing tremendously in Europe, in US, in Japan, in Far East, and other places. So I think there needs to be immediately a kind of a rethink. We have to deepen this handshake. You know, we have been setting up centers of excellence. Ambassador has mentioned it, Ambassador Subaraidu, Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, and I know of it also from my personal experience, centers of excellence in IT. It's been a tremendous success. It's been welcomed. I think we need to extend this more. We need to set up centers of excellence also in biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, you know, emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, maybe agro industries and food processing, whatever, maybe disaster management, green technologies, climate change, because India has it all. And I think it is a concern. These are mutually important priorities for both nations. So that's another point I'd like to make. We have to deepen this handshake about being a knowledge partner. Here, I'd also like to mention that some of the elite institutions, academic research, apex, institutions like the All India Medical Institute, maybe the Indian Institute of Technology, Indian Institute of Science, other premier institutions, academic institutions, and may I also mention very modestly but proudly at the same time OP Jindal, which is now rated as a #1 private university in India, and it has QNS rating. So institutions of eminence, I think, need to immediately be in dialogue with each other. And they can be in dialogue in areas which are emerging technologies, as I mentioned, items, streams which are of mutual interest in the coming years, because I also pointed out how the knowledge-based economies are going to succeed. So India's model here, it'll be very relevant to mention, has been, and this is what I have been saying to presidents whenever I met them, in my capacity as ambassador, as a former ambassador, that India's model of development cooperation is really, really very mutual. It's benign, and it's meant to give opportunities to both sides. It's bilateral. So we like to send our experts. We like to network with like-minded counterparts in foreign countries. And then we get exposure to that opportunity and ecosystem. We learn, we share our expertise. And what we do is, more important, we empower communities. We empower local communities. And may I submit here that empowering communities and segments of population abroad, I think that's a permanent contribution to the economy. I dare say that we may not, because of economic challenges of our own, not have the capacity to give millions of dollars for physical infrastructure. But certainly we can empower societies and communities abroad. And I think we need to be in this all the time. And I assure Peru and the Latin American participants here that India is fully capable of doing this. And that is what our development model is. We've heard remarks about the ITEC cooperation. Yes, A lot of scholarships have been given since 1964. A lot of Peruvians have benefited. Well, we need to extend it even further. We also station ITech experts abroad. So that's how we need to get into the knowledge embrace. Now, there's a little bit about the industry and the economy segment. I also have a few remarks here. I find that, and we don't have to name any country, but we know that some of the big players from Asia are getting most of the opportunities, whether it is mining or extraction of natural resources, etc. I think for Peru and India's sake, we need to diversify this. We need to have more partners and participants. And from the point of view of India, to my Indian colleagues in the government, I'd like to suggest that we will need to really start helping some of our Indian companies. And what I want to suggest here is that the competition from some of the main countries in our region, for example, in Asia, this is coming from corporations and companies which are state-owned enterprises. Now, private sector, companies from India, medium, small, whatever, cannot face the avalanche and the resources which these, state-owned enterprises have. So what we got to do is we have to encourage the Indian small, medium enterprises to start forming consortia. They should come into consortium format. And then they should get guarantees, maybe of bank loans or whatever, from their apex industry bodies. This needs to be this can be guaranteed by the apex industry. It is, for example, in the case of pharmaceuticals, it can be Chemexel. In the case of automobiles, it can be ECMA. And likewise, the Apex Industry Association had to stand guarantee for the loans. What we can do as the government, we can co-guarantee the loan also. Let's give it a certain boost. Because once that is done in consortium format, at least they will have the confidence and also the financial resources to start bidding for mining, for various other, important natural resource extraction ventures, etc. So this is going to give them a new breather. I know that at one time, when I was Joint Secretary Latin America, for example, there was a lot of interest by India in doing contract farming operations. Brazil, Paraguay, at that time, it was just going for a dice. I mean, literally, I think it was perhaps a hectare of land was available for $3,000, something like that, some absurd price. I said, if I were rich enough, I'd like to buy some land in Paraguay, because India is such an agricultural power. 57% of our population is dependent on agriculture as an occupation. And would you believe it, we have probably more than 27 or 30 agricultural universities. And some of our agriculturists and agronomists are world, scientists of world fame. I mean, MS Swaminathan, the Rice Institute in Manila, etc., has Indian scientists. So we have immense experience. Why don't we bring all these institutions into, some kind of handshake with counterparts in Latin America, in Peru? And why don't we encourage, again, some of our companies which want to do contract farming abroad? Why don't we again ask them to form some kind of consortium and take some loans, etc., so they can start doing agricultural operations abroad? From our point of view, I think this is extremely important because it supplements, it takes care of our food security requirements. We can grow soya, oil seeds, etc., and start exporting this back to India. So you have another opportunity. You have investment from our side. You have professionals who can optimize the opportunities, and you also have a ready market. I mean, what more do you want? We produce, we work with your local people, and then we export them back to India. So contract farming, I know the Solvent Extractors Association in Pune had put up a proposal which came to the MEA when I was Joint Secretary Latin America, and they even did a feasibility study. They wanted loans. They wanted to set up processes for extracting ethanol abroad, and I don't think this has found any success. So we need to encourage all this. This is on the economy, how to give a kickstart to some of our small, medium enterprises, because, unless we have, the bigger fish will take care of themselves. But unless we have the small and medium enterprises locked into an embrace with Peru industry and also Latin American companies, I don't think we're really going to make the strides we want to in our relationship. And, as I said in the beginning, it's very important for both countries, both Latin America and India, as members of the Global South, as countries which are not yet getting the full advantage for their expertise, for their natural resources, a lot of it which is leaking abroad to multinationals or to, monopolistic players from other regions. I think we should start participating in it. And that would be addressing some of our local communities' concerns that we should get a bigger share in the cake. And why should it just leak across to a foreign country, a particular foreign country, or a state-owned enterprise of another country? I think we can benefit from it. There has been, of course, a reticence from Indian side because of the immense geographical distance. I know that there has been also a distraction because India is a huge country with a lot of domestic markets, so people don't want to venture into new markets. Well, here again, I have a suggestion, and I had actually put that to CII. I don't think it has been taken into account. What I suggest is, I would like to point out that, and here we have to take the example from companies like Amazon. India is a huge software power. Why don't we set up a state-of-the-art web portal, which is going to also be supported by mobile applications, where it will basically be an interface for selling high-value goods and services between India and Latin America, India and Peru. This is a state-of-the-art web portal. Now, the orders will be placed, everything will be online, and how we're going to support it is, we're going to station physical engineers physically in some of the trade zones. In Central America, there was the Panama Pacifico zone I had visited, an amazing place with customs and all departments there, warehousing, etc. So we can put our goods, store them there, and we can also put our resident engineers there. So whenever there is a demand for a high value item, for example, earth moving equipment, high value engineering items, we can install, we can rush our equipment from there, we can rush our engineers, and they can service the requirement. And of course, the portal has to be bilingual, it has to be supported by mobile applications. So this is something which you'll have to think on. It's kind of out of the box, it's still not being implemented, but it would give our industry and trade a better exposure, because why should we just leave all these things to the Amazons of the world? Why can't we do it between ourselves? We can agree. Let's give the South-South cooperation a chance. Let's share in the business and let's get rich together. That's what the whole idea is. And of course, the other suggestion I have is I am a little disillusioned and disenchanted now that I'm an academic from the way the trade, the apex chambers operate. I'm not completely in sync with them. I've always told them they finalize their trade missions at the last moment and they keep changing the names. This is not how we organize trade missions abroad. It should be done minimal with an advance notice of 3 to 4 months. Everything should reach our embassy and even yours 3-4 months in advance. The name should be there, the business profile should be there, their interest should be there. And if possible, also feasibility reports and executive summaries of what investment they want. That should be there, because then only the ambassadors and diplomats can, talk to local audiences and sell and engage. And this is how, these trade missions can become a little more effective. I can go on. I mean, of course, it has been already talked about the Indian cultural ties with Peru and Latin America. We at the people-to-people level, we resonate with each other. We love each other's culture. I think we should teach a lot of more Latin American dances, and we should, Latin America is all about celebration of the spirit. Look at what a wonderful spirited region you are, and what a metaphysical, soulful, kind of inward-looking country we are. I think so we can actually mesh very well. I think the two energies can connect very well. Together, I think it'll be a wonderful blend. And we should cooperate because of what I said. We should also cooperate, therefore, at the multilateral level in the UN on policies, global issues like climate change, WTO, reform of the UN, etc. Why should we just let, a few powers why should we let them call the shots? I think there is a lot of strength which we have. And let me just end by saying that we can do this now more than ever we did before, because we don't have to travel. We don't have to take visas. We don't have to be on an aircraft. We can just do what we are doing right now. We can go online. And then after having set up all the introductions and done the preliminary work, then we can meet as per mutual convenience. So point being that we are a very interconnected, interdependent, globalized world today. In this globalized world, there is the multinational corporation model of doing business. And in the multinational model of doing business, there are multiple vendors from various countries. So we all can contribute to the global supply chain. It's not just the MNC should walk over and take away the advantage. We can also participate in the global supply chain. So let's keep, optimize on that opportunity of interdependence. We are equally important contributors to the global order, economy, and everything. So we have to change the dialogue. And I think these are fault lines which are also, of course, being talked about in the G20 when we talk about the reform of the international monetary and financial architecture. This is what it means: giving the global South, giving countries like ourselves, giving India and Latin American countries a bigger voice. We need to articulate our concerns jointly. And we need to give our companies, businesses, economies a better deal. So very quickly, that's a kind of a overview of what I felt we should do at the private sector level, at the government level. And I would submit also in my present capacity at the academic. Maybe we can do some research on this and put some professors and academics and research scholars who can actually justify that there is merit in pursuing the kind of operating system which I have recommended. I thank you for your patience and giving me this opportunity to share some of these suggestions and remarks.
Thank you very much, Professor Ravi Thapar, for your presentation. It's a very, the point of view has been very interesting, and we should put in perspective for design the future relation between Peru and India and Latin America as well. Well, we'll continue with the program in order to continue discussing about Indian engagement with Latin America and Peru's engagement with Asia. So the second speaker is the Ambassador Luis Tsuboyama Galván. He's our current ambassador of Peru to the Republic of Indonesia and to ASEAN. Ambassador Tsuboyama, as a career member of the Foreign Service of Peru, rank of ambassador, has served as the Director General for Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 2020 to 2022, where he led the teams in charge of the ratification of the Peru-UK Trade Agreement and the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, CCTPP. In the Peruvian Congress, Peru's accession to the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, and OECD's invitation to Peru to start accession process. He has also served as Peru's national coordinator of the Pacific Alliance. In 2020, he was Director General for Asia and Oceania. Previously, he was Director of Investment Promotion and China and Southeast Asia Desk Chief. Other assignments include press, trade, digital, and gender issues within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Tsuboyama earned a bachelor's degree in law and political science from the University of Lima, Peru. He's a magister on diplomacy and international relations from the Diplomatic Academy of Peru, Master of Arts from the Sophia University in Tokyo, Japan, Masters of Arts in Global Studies from the Fletcher School of Diplomacy and Law at the Tufts University in the United States. He has attended the University of Foreign Affairs in Beijing, China, and a program of the Alexander of Guzman Foundation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil. Welcome, Professor Tsuboyama. Ambassador Tsuboyama, please.
Good morning to everyone in Lima. Good evening in India. Greetings from Jakarta. I would like to confirm first if you can listen me well. It's okay?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh and Dr. Alto Fanfichi, and of course, Professor Tang and Professor Adins to organize this event. And I also want to give my greetings to my fellow speakers and my colleague Monica Campos of our embassy in India. I have been invited to give an overall overview of the Peru engagement with Asia, and I will not go into details with India since there are many specialists on this area. So let me first share my PowerPoint to start the presentation. Okay. Okay, why Asia matters for us, and here are some ideas. The expansion of Asia, of developing Asia, is probably the most important significant change in the world economy. We know very well that before the Industrial Revolution, China and India, they have been the most important economies in the world. We are coming again to the new Asian century. Asia Development Bank predicted that by 2050, Asia will be the dominant region, economically speaking, in the world. And by 2030, some analyst says that 4 countries of Asia will be one of the 10 largest in the world: China, India, Japan, and Indonesia. But before going that, talking about the Peru's engagement with Asia, I would like to give you a historical background. The first interaction of Peru with Asia started with the Manila Galleon, that trading between the Philippines and New Spain, today's Mexico, and the connection between Acapulco and Callao. Peruvian silver was used to finance parties of this trade. In the 19th century, thousands of Chinese workers or coolies were brought to Peru to labor on the Guano Island and sugar plantations, experience exploitation and discrimination. Later, Chinese were followed by Japanese migrants who worked initially in large coastal plantations, so the majority moved to the cities when their contract expired. By 1936, Japanese immigrants represented 45% of Peru's total foreign population, based mostly in Lima, the capital. However, during the Second World War, the Japanese community faced kind of difficulties, and some of them they were deported. However, by 1960, bilateral relationships between Peru and Japan improved, and Japan turned to Latin America, including Peru, in search for raw materials necessary for its post-war reindustrialization. In the case of China, in 1875, Peru and Qing's China signed the Treaty of Friendship, Trade, and Navigation. In 1884, Imperial China sent its first diplomat to Peru. Previously, between, as I said, 1849 and 1874, 100,000 Chinese men were brought to Peru, and successive waves of migrants continued to arrive to Peru. The influence of Chinese people and their culture expanded in Peru, in my country, created a strong and business-oriented community called Tusan. Today, Peru hosts or has the largest ethnic Chinese population in Latin America. In 1971, Peru established with the People's Republic of China diplomatic relationships, and becoming the 3rd country in Latin America after Cuba and Chile to recognize the communist state. And for years, in these early years, relations with China were mainly focused on economic and technical cooperation. In 2008, the bilateral relations with China entered a new phase, and which was established a strategic partnership that moved in 2013 to a comprehensive strategic partnership. In 2009, also, China-Peru Free Trade Agreement was signed, and in 2011, China overtook the United States as Peru's main trade partner. Today, Peruvians of Asian descent constitute an estimate 3 to 5% of the whole population of Peru. We are 33 million, mostly Chinese, and their influence is very strong in our country. Also, Peru now has diplomatic and trade relationships with more than 30 countries across the Asia Pacific, but the relationships with Japan and China are especially strong due to these historical ties. Recently, Korea has also made an impressive inroad in Peru. The progress has been exponential, and the bilateral relationship has been extended thanks to the signing of a free trade agreement in 2011. In 2012, Korea and Peru elevated their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership framework. 60 years after the initial establishment of diplomatic ties between Peru and Korea, the relationship is in their prime. From the 60s onwards, Peru also has steadily established diplomatic relationships with most of the Asian countries: India, Australia, Korea, Thailand, New Zealand, Indonesia, and Singapore. Also, it's very important what we call the Peruvian multilateral economic diplomacy, and the highlights of that are the recent ratification of the CPTP in 2021, the start process to become a member of the OECD for Peru, and of course, the accession of Peru to APEC in 1998, and a diverse numbers of FTA that has been signed between Peru and relevant economies in the Asia-Pacific region. What are the key factors behind this Peru engagement with Asia? First, when Peru started their life as a new republic, Peru looked for recognition among major powers in the world, including China and Japan. Another important guideline was the search for trade markets. Despite the early connections, a commercial relationship with Asia only started to gain importance after the Second World War, with the emergence of Japan as a major partner, buyer of the Peruvian natural resources, and supplier of goods and investment flows. The economic relationship also received a boost in the 70s and 80s, when a second wave of Asian fast-growing economies like Korea boosted trade to new heights. Yet the major turning point will have to wait until the turn of the 21st century, with the rise of the most populous economies in Asia, China and India, with their insatiable hunger for natural resources. Peru provides an early example of how ties to Asia promote sustained economic growth. At the beginning of the 21st century, Peru had one of the strongest economic performance of any country in Latin America, as a result of the strategic decision taken by the Peruvian authorities to enlarge their geographical focus from the United States and Europe to Asia. In the 90s, embassies and trade offices also were established in Southeast Asia, expanding the Peruvian diplomatic presence in Asia. And as I said before, in 1998, we joined APEC. By 2012, 4 of the top markets of Peru, export markets of Peru, were in Asia: China, Japan, Korea, and India. And by the following year, China became the top trading partner on the international level. Even with the slowdown of the financial crisis and the COVID pandemic, Peru has managed to overcome the difficulties as a result of demands of goods from China and the rest of the world. As we can see, a multiple and pragmatic relationship was adopted by Peru in order to avoid dependence on a single power, as well as to reduce impacts of vulnerabilities in the face of cyclical crises that have been occurring in the world. We can see here the diplomatic presence of Peru in the Asia-Pacific region. We have relations with more than 30 countries, and we established 12 embassies, 4 consular generals, and 6 trade offices in the whole region of the Asia-Pacific. Related with economic engagement, we can say that the new century, Peru developed intense negotiations to ensure free entry for its main export of goods and services in Asia. Peru already has in place free trade agreements with multiple markets like China, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and Australia, and is negotiating or concluding similar ones in Indonesia, India, Thailand, and Hong Kong. In the case of the CPTPP, just called TPP before, it's a high quality trade agreement that has given access to markets like Malaysia, New Zealand, and Brunei. And of course, will boost our opportunities when future members like United Kingdom, China, and Taiwan will become members of the CPTPP. Peru also is evaluating its participation in the Digital Economic Trade Partnership, DIPA, and the RCEP that India has started to negotiate, but after decided to withdraw. And in the long term, Peru have interest to become development partner of ASEAN. We have a very strong relationship with ASEAN, and will be interesting to consider joining the ASEAN Australia New Zealand Free Trade Area. Singapore also has become a member of the Pacific Alliance. The Pacific Alliance is an economic bloc comprising Colombia, Chile, Peru, and Mexico. And this year, similar negotiation will start with Korea to become associate member. Which factors explain this deeper economic engagement with Asia Pacific? First is our vulnerability to change in world commodity prices due to our export-based characteristics. Basically, we're commodity export country, and among these commodities, mostly of our export to Asia are minerals. Second, United States, our traditional main trade partner, has become more inconsistent in their trade policy. And their decision to quit the CPTPP is an example of that. And there is an absence of clear and cohesive trade agenda with Latin America. This same feeling is perceived in Asia. In the 2020, as I mentioned before, the three top destinations of countries of our export that accounted 83% of our total trade with Asia are China, Japan, and South Korea. This relative importance has shifted in favor of China, a growing presence of Korea, and a newcomer with India. For Peru, China now represents 30% of our total trade with the world, and is becoming a substantial source of investment in mining, energy, and infrastructure. In this last infrastructure, the megaport project in Chancay is becoming a symbol of the Belt and Road Initiative. This slide shows you the Peru's exports level and percentage to the world. As you can see, mostly of our main trade partners are in Asia. Peru needs to diversify certainly their export baskets and trade investment partners. Apart from that, we are identifying a new trade partners in Southeast Asia. Most important are Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And also, although the most of the 80% of the Peruvian export to Asia are minerals and fish meal, in the last decade, Peru's agricultural exports has increased substantially, food and agri-industry and chemicals as well, with an overall positive evolution of Asia as a destination for value-added exports. The challenge for Peru is to nurture this trend and take measures to assure Asia as a market for higher value-added Peruvian export. Historically speaking, also, Peru has been an important destination of Asian investment. In the 60s and 70s, Peru was one of the two main receivers of Japanese FDI, and this has changed in the last 10 years. Spain for a while was one of the most important sources with the United States and South Africa, but now China leads Asian investment in Peru, and Korea also emerged as an important source of capital and technology. To conclude, here are some ideas and some challenges that Peru are facing towards our engagement with Asia. The Asia Pacific has become strategically important for Peru, but we are living in a world, in a complex world. Now, more than ever, we need to tap in each other's experience in handling these challenges. War in Ukraine, strategic competition between China and the United States, the tense situation in Taiwan Strait, the internal political and economic evolution of China after the 20 Congress that will be held in October, AUKUS, Quad, Indo-Pacific, even COVID, and the possible potential pandemics, all are issues relevant for Peru in order to manage and navigate this challenge and keep an equidistant stance when needed. But also we face internal and structural challenge. Peru, like most Latin American countries, is not highly economic integrated with Asia. Still, we need to overcome obstacles that prevent from developing value and production chains that could make the country a more attractive partner for our Asia-Pacific counterparts. We have poor integration as a result of the absence of more assertive policies. We have a very difficult geographical conditions and a limited transportation infrastructure. Also, the political instability and uncertainty doesn't help to develop a long-term strategic plan, and the private sector remains timid. Peru continues to be a mono-commodity exporter, like Chile, for example. We lack the diversifications of commodity that Brazil has, or we are not hosting multi-product supply chains location like Mexico yet. The reliance on minerals revive the long-standing concern of Peru about the risk of excessive dependency on primary commodity exports. And we have challenged, as I said before, to achieve a more competitive and productive economy with quality in education, a better connectivity, and taking advantage of a digitalized world. Indeed, the main motivation behind Peru's aggressive pursuit of trade agreement has been to diversify the country's economic opportunities. Certainly, there are concerns of conflicts between foreign companies and local communities due to environmental or labor issues that have generated considerable costs in the country. We think that the simple pursuit of growth at any cost is not more valid. We want to promote economic growth that is inclusive, sustainable, and economic friendly. The experience in Asia and Asia-Pacific are relevant to us. For example, we can mention the successful social achievement in Southeast Asia, like poverty alleviation programs in Vietnam and Indonesia, the digitalization boom in the region, including India, or the development of software and pharmaceutical industries in India also, that we need to tap. Also, even that the relations are quite highly asymmetrical between Peru and Asia, not all the sectors of the economy has received the benefits of that. The effect of expanded markets and access to lower price intermediate goods appears positive to the Peruvian industry. Peru engagement with Asia has helped also to achieve sustained growth and raise the living standard of the population overall. Peru has made enormous strides in the Asia-Pacific region, but this wins has been mostly focused on China, Japan, and Korea. Recently, tentative steps have been started with India, with Southeast Asia, and with Australia and New Zealand. So in order to move to a more comprehensive and dynamic relationship. Without leadership, coordination and strategy, and without more investment of time and resources, the engagement with Asia-Pacific will remain superficial, and their longer-term benefits will not be fully realized. So we need to change, and we need to look for new paradigms in order to have a more positive relationship and engagement with Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tsuboyama. It has been very interesting perspective about the relation between Peru and the Asia in particular. So thank you very much for your participation. In order to continue with the program, and the topic in particular should be discuss about India-Peru bilateral relations. No? In particular, we're going to discuss more in detail about this issue. For this issue, we have invited, we have two guests, two speakers. The first one, we want to invite to Professor Sebastien Adins, which is the head of the Department of Political Science at the Catholic University of Peru. Professor Adins, he has a master in international relations from Kent University. He has a doctor in political science from PUCP. Also, he is a professor, researcher, and director of international relations career at PUCP too. Welcome, Professor Adins.
Thank you, Ruben. Dear Excellencies, authorities, colleagues, good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. As announced, my presentation will deal about the bilateral relations between Peru and India in this 21st century. Although some elements of this relation have already been highlighted by Ambassador Subarayadu and Councillor Campos. I will start with mentioning some key historical events in the 20th century in order to understand our present. Then we will move to the main dimensions of the current bilateral relation. And I will end this presentation identifying the importance cooperation between both countries has nowadays. First of all, we should know that during the most part of the 20th century, there existed only sporadic relations between New Delhi and Lima. It took 16 years after India's independence to establish diplomatic relations with Peru, and another 6 years until 1969 to open embassies in both nations. The trade links were very limited, and the only important issues that were connecting both countries as part of the then so-called Third World were the so-called New Economic International Order of the G77, mainly in the 70s, the mutual opposition against racism and apartheid, and the principle of non-alignment. As we all know, India was one of the most important and enthusiastic members and leaders of the movement of non-aligned countries, a grouping to which Peru entered by 1973. And it was especially with President Velasco and later on in the 80s with Alan Garcia that the links with the other third world countries were given more priority. It was also Alan Garcia, the first Peruvian president to make an official trip to India already in 1987, followed 10 years later by another visit by Alberto Fujimori. The first high-level visit of an Indian official was the arrival in Lima by the President Narayanan in 1998. So what about the current relations between India and Peru? By far, the most important dimension of the bilateral relations is trade. As it was mentioned, as in other Latin American countries, especially from 2010, there was a boom in the commercial links between both economies. For instance, 20 years ago, in 2002, total trade between India and Peru was worth only $80 million. Already by 2018, it reached a record of 3.3 billion United States dollars, leaving a huge trade surplus for Peru of about $1.6 billion in that same year. So steadily, India made itself one of the most important destinations for Peruvian exports, starting from 26th place in the ranking of 2011 to number 3 in 2018. On the other hand, India generally occupied a more stable position as the 12th or the 13th most important provider of Peru. Of course, from the Indian perspective, the situation looks quite different. Despite the huge progress made in recent years, in 2021, Peru ranked only 56th among India's main export markets and 37th among its providers. Regarding the structure of bilateral trades, the relation is clearly asymmetric. More than 90% of recent Peruvian exports towards India are based on just 2 minerals, gold, and although with some smaller quantities, copper. Instead, India is selling a far more diversified set of products, being most of them industrial products like cars, medicines, motorcycles, iron structures, and cotton yards. As such, this situation resembles the trade relation Peru maintains with some other bigger economies such as China, with a very small proportion of agricultural goods or manufactures. Since 2017, there have been 5 rounds of negotiations between Peru and India, aiming at the signing of a free trade agreement. Nevertheless, since 2020, little progress has been made, partly because of the international context, and of course, some worries about the effects this FTA could bring for some sensitive sectors, such as Peru's textile industry. Anyway, India is the only important trade partner of Peru without an FTA signed in this moment. 2 other economic topics I would like to mention are foreign investment and tourism. Here we see a far more less intense relation, although some Indian enterprises do have some investments registered in Peru, such as in minery, in energy, or the pharmaceutical sector. India clearly is not yet an important investor in Peru. According to Proinversión, the foreign investment agency in Peru, India even doesn't figure among Peru's 30 most important investment partners. So this means there is still an enormous potential in this field. The same applies with Peruvian companies in investing in India, maybe with the important exception of AGE Group. It's one of the few Peruvian multinational companies with a production capacity just in India of about 40,000 bottles of soda drink per hour. Also, the touristic links between India and Peru are still incipient, although growing with, for instance, in 2019, just before the pandemic, the arrival of almost 9,500 Indian tourists to Peru. Apart from trade and economics, both countries maintain a political dialogue through regularly consultation rounds between its foreign ministries. There is the already mentioned joint commission established to enhance cooperation, and there is the parliamentary league between the Peruvian Congress and the Indian House of the People. Among the several agreements that were already reached between both parts, I mentioned the one on cooperation in new and renewable energy. There is a defense cooperation agreement and a memorandum on cooperation in geology and mineral resources. Also important is that Peru is supporting India in its bid to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Thinking about the future of the bilateral relations, I think it's important to mention the huge potential bilateral trade still has, even without an FTA, especially for Peru's exports of fruits, of vegetables, and some other minerals apart from gold and copper. Especially for the Peruvian public, in this event, it's important to know that India is not just one of the most important economies in the world already. In purchasing power parity, it even ranks 3rd in the world after China and the United States. But it is also an emerging industrial powerhouse. And this, of course, means that India will have to increase its imports. It's already increasing them of some key minerals Peru can offer. Other fields of potential cooperation have already been mentioned by Professor Ravi Thapar, starting from science and technology, education, climate change, industrial development, sustainable agriculture, and even defense. Especially in the current context of international tensions among the great powers, I think one of the key assets India has as a great player is its strategic autonomy. Traditionally, it has very narrow relations with Russia, but after the end of the Cold War, it also developed sound relations with the United States, Japan, some key European Union countries, and some Middle East nations. Above all, it shares most of the political values Peru embraces, like democracy, cultural diversity, and even the basic principles of the United Nations Charter. They both share, it was already mentioned, an enormously rich history as civilizations. So I recognize that we are literally on the two extremes of one same planet, but I think time has come to explore the possibilities of a more narrow relationship, not just in economic terms, but also in the fields we already managed to identify. It's important also to impulse a better understanding of our realities, and I hope this first event organized by PUC University and the Indian Council of World Affairs makes already a small contribution to this endeavor. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Adins, for your presentation. And according to the program, the last speaker is the Dr. Stuti Banerjee. She is a research fellow at the Indian Council for World Affairs in New Delhi, India. At the Council, Dr. Banerjee is engaged in research of North America, Latin America, the Caribbean, the Indo-Pacific, and the Polar region. This includes producing analytical articles on the politics, strategy, and security, and nuclear security and risks, with emphasis on India's relation with the Americas. Professor Stuti, welcome to the dialogue.
Thank you so much, Professor Tang, and a very good morning to my friends in Peru, and a good evening to everybody here in India. As has already been stated out, that India and Peru have enjoyed a very successful 6 decades of relationship, where we have closely cooperated with each other bilaterally to strengthen our government-to-government and people-to-people relations, and through various multilateral forums, as was mentioned by our ambassador in the inaugural remarks that he made. Now, as has been pointed out, the economic ties form the bedrock of our bilateral relations, and much has been spoken by the previous speakers on that. So not looking at the traditional areas of cooperation, such as agriculture and mining, that we already are engaged in and know much about, I will limit my presentation to identifying what I feel are 4 areas of cooperation that I feel that can lay the foundation for an enhanced relationship, which is futuristic. Now, the first area that I have in mind is the startup scene in both India and Peru. Now, India has the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world, which is expected to witness a year-on consistent annual growth of 12 to 15%. It has about 50,000 startups in 2018, and around 8,900 to 9,300 roughly technology startups started again in 2000, added to this later years. Now, India's Startup India is a flagship initiative of the government of India, which has catalyzed this startup culture and is promoting the building of a strong and inclusive ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship in India. So this includes setting up, a 10,000 crore fund for venture capitalists for micro, small, and medium enterprises sectors. And it is looking at allocation of about 2,000 crores to set up specialized banks for this sector, which we call mudra banks. Mudra in Hindi is money. And in earmarking about 1,000 crores to support startups across India. Now, as of 2022, India is home to about 103 unicorns with a total evaluation of $335 billion. Now, this is going to see an exponential growth, and India has seen the growth of unicorns over the years, with 2019 seeing about 11 unicorns starting. Now, when we look at Latin America, we see that the funding for Latin America startups has also doubled in the last few years. There is increased availability of capital, and this is creating more opportunities for startups to scale up both regionally and globally. And in the region, Peru continues to have one of the best performing economies and fastest growing startup scenes. Now, the government of Peru has the Innovate Peru initiative, which awards approximately $13.8 million in investments across the country for startups. So given that India and Peru are encouraging their respective startup ecosystems to develop innovative and evolving technologies to find solutions for domestic challenges, and India is well placed with adequate capital, and with Peru's startup ecosystem trying to scale up, this could, I feel, be one of the areas of cooperation between the two countries in the future. Now, similarly, we have from this tech scene a booming area of cooperation in fintech. Peru is home to about 120 fintech startups, which are actively taking the issue of financial inclusion and better servicing the region's small and medium-sized businesses. Similarly, you have India, which is now recognized as a strong fintech hub globally. And you have Indian entrepreneurial landscape continuing to evolve with more and more fintech-led businesses which are developing, and businesses and investors which are backing this. So India's fintech market is expected to grow at about $1 trillion in investment and about $200 billion in revenue by 2030. So with India's innovation by fintech and Peru's fintech sector poised to grow in the near future, I feel that this is an area of cooperation where we can exchange ideas, investment, and collaboration. The second sector that I have in mind is artificial intelligence. Now, the use of AI in areas such as healthcare, education, urban infrastructure, retail, mobility, etc., has kind of revolutionized these sectors over the course of the last few years. And the global artificial intelligence market is valued at about $93.5 billion in the coming years. Now, India has joined the Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence in 2020. This is an organization which has international and multi-stakeholders to guide the responsible development and use of AI, which is grounded in human rights, inclusion, diversity, innovation, and economic growth. This is also the first initiative of its type for evolving a better understanding for the challenges and opportunities around AI. India boasts a very robust AI ecosystem and structure. The Niti Aayog, which is India's premier institution, which is looking at development plans, in 2018 had come up with a national strategy for artificial intelligence that has identified 5 focal areas, which are healthcare, agriculture, education, urban smart city infrastructure development, and transport and mobility. It also has identified 5 barriers that need to be addressed, which is lack of research expertise, absence of enabling data ecosystems, high resource cost and low awareness for adoption, lack of regulation around privacy and security, and absence of collaborative approach to adoption and application. Stemming from this, India has gone ahead and established industry-led international centers for transformation artificial intelligence. And in 2021, Prime Minister Modi launched an initiative, India-based initiative called AI for All. It is a self-learning online program designed to raise public awareness about artificial intelligence. And the initiative is one of the largest of its kind in terms of developing AI public awareness, and the government aims to train about 1 million citizens in this per year. Now, in Peru is within Latin America is recognized as a leader in research, development, innovation, deployment, and use of AI in its ethical and responsible use in the production of public and private goods and services. These efforts have aimed to accelerate national development and promote digital inclusion while ensuring the reduction of social gaps. Now, the government of Peru has implemented a strategy called Implement the National AI Strategy, which is promoting the development of human talent, infrastructure, and the production of goods and services based on AI for the benefit of a more inclusive and multicultural Peruvian society that takes advantage of Industry 4.0 technologies in favor of sustainable development. So as I find that the development of AI and machine learning is the future for global economics, and economics is the bedrock of our relation, allowing companies from Peru and India to improve performance by reducing errors and improving quality and speed, it would be, I feel, prudent for governments and private sectors to seek cooperation in this sector. And as India and Peru both develop their own outlooks towards AI, it provides an opportunity for both countries to collaborate, not only in exchange of best ideas, but also start critical discussion on the development of a rules-based governance for ethical use of AI. The third sector I find that we can look at is space technology. Now, space technology as a powerful enabler provides a variety of vital inputs for holistic and rapid development of rural areas, villages in specific. For India, it provides us with opportunities to reach out to a vast number of our population. And India has been among the world leaders in developing end-to-end capabilities in both satellite remote sensing and communication. The Indian Space Research Organization has made remarkable progress in building of state-of-the-art space infrastructures, such as the Indian National Satellite for Communication and the Indian Remote Sensing Satellite for Earth Observation. Now, space-based systems are effective in supporting disaster management, understanding early warning and forecast unusual extreme weather conditions. And in 2017, to enable our neighbors also to take advantage of these systems, India launched the SARC, or the South Asia Satellite, which is primarily looking at supporting communication, internet services, disaster management, telemedication, teleeducation, weather forecasting. These are very important for a region and countries which are facing climate change challenges or economically lagging behind with limited technology resources. Now, Latin America's space program has continued to develop and expand in the last few years, with countries like Bolivia and Peru achieving major victories over the successful launches of new satellites. We have examples that highlight the new types of satellites that Latin American countries are trying to develop to ensure that there is better access to communication services, helping monitor their territories, particularly in terms of addressing deforestation and extreme weather conditions. So in this, I find that we have a number of areas, we have similar goals. And Peru in this has signaled its ambition by launching its first Earth observation satellite called PeruSat. So I feel that this area is another one which we can find collaborations with. We have common ideas, and there is a possibility of exploring space collaboration for our shared goals. The last aspect that I feel that we can look at in collaborations was highlighted before as well, and that is climate change. Now, India has displayed a commitment and leadership by taking affirmative action in climate change mitigations. And this includes the fact that we have taken a number of initiatives. I will highlight the 4 areas that India has taken action in. One is on the domestic front, where we have made commitments to reducing our domestic emission rates. India has to achieve this promise that it will achieve a goal of 33 to 35% reduction by 2030 on its promised Paris agreements. Second is in renewable energy. We have become the world leaders in terms of solar, wind, and biomass. India's solar capacity and its innovation, its stress on renewable sources is well known. Third is that India has taken a range of climate action initiatives. In terms of its industry, transport, and electricity, we are pushing to ensure that 30% of our new vehicles that would be sold in the next few years would be electric vehicles. Now, Peru is one of the first countries in the Latin America and the Caribbean region to actually adopt climate change goals and to announce its nationally determined contributions, or nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs. Now, Peru's recent NDCs, which were updated in 2020, have increased its mitigation goals from 30 to 40% on what it had committed, and will now achieve in 2030. So, as Peru also builds its national energy plan, which has a huge commitment on renewable energy, especially we find that both Peru and India are looking at the development of hydrogen in terms of looking at green energy. So India has also looking at this resource. Peru is also here. While there are challenges to developing hydrogen as a green energy source, since we are on a common goal, I think we can work together to exchange our scientific community ideas and how to go about doing this and what are the feasible areas in it. strangely enough, I find that there is a very specific area of cooperation in climate change that we can look at, and that is glacier studies or glaciology. Peru is home to about 71% of the world's tropical glaciers. India has the Himalayan mountain range, which has glaciers, and we know that due to climate change, glaciers are receding, and that would have a domino effect on our water security and food security. So this provides, I think, an area of cooperation again. India and Peru are members of the International Solar Alliance. Both have initiatives that want to look at development of smart grids. These are areas I feel that in terms of climate change, again, provide us with a number of opportunities. Climate change, International Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, etc., has already been mentioned, so I will not go into those. While there are, I feel, more areas of cooperation, I have highlighted these four because I think they bring cooperation in innovation and technology development, which was, as Ambassador Thapar said, technology and technology-led growth is going to be the future. So I think these are the ideas which would help increase our business-to-business relations, encourage private sector to also engage while laying down the foundations for future people-to-people contact with each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stuti. According to the program, we planned a small dialogue, but because due to the limited time, we can do it today. But I think it's a good reason to maybe in the future and to plan to organize another events, especially as you mentioned, to organize next year events related to cooperation, but especially to celebrate the 6th anniversary of diplomatic relation between India and Peru. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Indian Council of World Affairs for your great support. Once again, Dr. Stuti, thank you very much for your support. You're enthusiastic to organize this event. To the Embassy of India to Peru, thank you very much, Ambassador, for your support. In particular, to put in force the agreement, we signed it with the ICWA. So thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much, Dr. Panfichi, from our Vice Rector of Research, for support this event, all our colleagues at PUCP, and also, of course, I'd like to thank to all the speakers and our Mrs. Monica Campos in the Embassy of Peru in India. Thank you very much, of course, Professor Ambassador Tsuboyama and Professor Ravi Thapar. Of course, and thank you very much to all of you to be connected very early here in Lima, and of course in India as well. Maybe you are finished working, but you made the effort to participate in this event. So, well, finally, thank you very much to all of you, and I think it has been a very interesting dialogue to see the potential opportunities in collaboration between both countries. So once again, thank you very much, and have a nice day. And later on, we coordinate another events we could organize in the future. Have a good night in India, and of course, have a nice day here in Lima. And thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Professor Tang, for conducting this dialogue for us. I would also like, on behalf of the ICWA, to thank all our speakers, especially Mr. Subraraidu, the Ambassador of India to Peru, Ms. Monica Campos, who's the Chargé d'Affaires of Embassy of Peru to India, and Dr. Panfichi, the Vice President of Research for PUCP. I also take this opportunity to thank Ambassador Thapar and Ambassador Luis for their excellent presentations and highlighting India's engagement with Peru and Peru's engagement in Asia for us. I also take this opportunity to thank Dr. Adins for his help and cooperation, and obviously you, Sir Professor Tang, for all your assistance. Thank you so much, and we look forward to our next program and working in the events future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see you.
See you. Thank you.